in Chicago, we are undertaking an ambitious project to design curriculum that will also be digital for all of the students in the district. So I joined the district this year, last summer, and I've been collaborating with them in this work. I'm on the teaching and learning side of the house, but I've had my experience on the technology side too, and have come from Forsyth County Schools in Georgia, where I was the coordinator of instructional technology.
Tim also worked for Safari for a while, but he left us to go to Chicago. I'm Tim Beekman, president and co-founder of Safari Montage. We build digital platforms that deliver resources to the classroom. We've been around for over 30 years, so we've kind of done this for a period of time. And we've been in Chicago for 18 years. That's kind of hard to believe. But for that amount of time, we've been delivering resources in Chicago, back to the Arnie Duncan days, if you guys remember Arnie Duncan. So, you know, we've been in Chicago building this platform and a concept over a really long period of time. And a lot of that is done to change an environment that they've had.
So Chicago Public Schools is kind of like your smaller sized district. It is the third largest in the country, actually. We have almost 21,000 teachers, over 360,000 students in 644 schools. So I've been there a year and I haven't made it to every school yet. I figured that if I went to every school, if I went to two a day, every day of the school year, I might get to them all. But you can see that it's really hard for us to distribute some of our innovations at scale. So that's one of the big challenges that we're trying to overcome. Another thing in Chicago Public Schools, they have had a long history of autonomy. So in many districts I know now, we're trying to have schools have more autonomy. Well, Chicago schools have had that for a very long time. And we all value that autonomy. It is a source of creativity for districts, for schools, to be able to implement new innovations very quickly. However, this has also caused some equity issues in the district. And some schools have, in some more affluent neighborhoods, have been able to rely on those other funding sources like parents with bake sales and that type of thing to provide other curricular opportunities for students and some other educational experiences, while some of our schools and maybe some lower income neighborhoods have had a struggle. So what we're trying to do is focus on the equity, and the use of the standards provided by IMS Global are key to this equitable learning initiative that we are engaging in right now. So one of the first things that we're working on is building out our curriculum equity initiative, our digital ecosystem to support all of this. And I'm just going to quickly go through some of the resources that we have available. We are currently using a secure SSO portal with rapid identity for our launch into our system. And of course, the standards from IMS Global are making this work for us. We are also undergoing at the same time a tech modernization project where we are deploying devices beginning with our highest need schools, but deploying devices, increasing the bandwidth, something that has not been able to take place. In fact, when we talk about autonomy, not only do our schools or have our schools been engaged in designing their own curriculum across 644 schools, but they've also been acquiring their own technology devices too. So we also have a variety of devices all being utilized throughout the district. So in that top left-hand corner, you can see the digital tools and resources that we are working on providing all schools, and also moving into a lease refresh system for that. We, as Tim Beekman said, we've been using Safari Montage for a very long time in Chicago, streaming our board meetings and accessing digital content. Our Learning Object Repository is also going to be our storehouse for our curriculum that we're designing. We have been engaged in an RFP process throughout this whole year. One of the things I know a lot of districts have done is they pull together lead teachers, curriculum area specialists, bring them together and begin writing and designing their own curriculum. In Chicago, we knew that that method was not going to work for us. Plus, as large as we are, we like to do things very quickly in Chicago. So one of the things that we did was to issue an RFP for curriculum providers and publishers to design curriculum for us this year. And I'll be giving some more information about that in my later session this morning. But we are getting ready to, it's all public now, and they are going forward with our board tomorrow. As part of this RFP too, we have another category for a new student assessment system that is going to be School City. And so that's going to give us the information we need that we will be able to pass back and forth to our various systems. For Google, Chicago is, I've been told, is Google's largest educational implementation, and it's their third largest of any enterprise system beyond education. So Google has been used very heavily in the district, and it's what the teachers are used to using for a learning management system as well. And we also are employing at this time, or implementing at this time, our new student information system, that's Follett Aspen. They've also made a lot of progress in developing and supporting now one roster, and that's going to make sure that the teachers and the students' class is rostered to the correct curriculum from Safari Montage. We want to add assessments from School City into Safari Montage, and we want the student performance on those assessments to be transferred back to the gradebook in Follett Aspen. And again, those standards from IMS Global are making that happen for us. And I also want you to hear from our teachers some of the issues that they are undergoing every day. And I'll be presenting again some more data about that, but let's hear from their voices now.
My name is Pam Osorio. I teach 3rd grade at Portage Park Elementary School in the Portage Park neighborhood.
My name is Danielle Aiken, and I teach 2nd grade at William H. Brown in the West Haven neighborhood.
My name is Alexandra Richmond. I teach 3rd and 4th grade special education at Mahalia Jackson Elementary.
I am currently lesson planning pretty much on my own for all subjects except math. For reading, science, and social studies, I spend time on the internet trying to find books or find resources to use.
And so I'm constantly pulling from Teacher Pay Teacher, Common Core worksheets, anywhere I can. I also have a membership to Scholastic.
I am spending endless amounts of time. Over the summer, I'm probably working at least 2-3 hours in the summer, and then during the school year, it's pretty much just constant. I am probably definitely going over the $250 we are allotted each year.
Generally, to do either a lesson plan or a unit plan, it's anywhere minimum 8 hours to about 16 hours, depending on how in-depth I am planning, how detailed the plans are going to be. I spend a lot of money, for my students to ensure that they're getting the lesson or something's memorable of what we learned.
One of the things that teachers are constantly being motivated to do is meet the child exactly where they are. And so a part of this curriculum will enable our students to have more access.
The Curriculum Equity Initiative will benefit teachers by saving them time. I also think it'll benefit teachers in saving them money.
I'll be excited about it. So, generally when a teacher's excited about it, they're excited about it, and it's going to eventually show student growth.
It will benefit student learning by opening the world up to them.
So let's talk about history here. So in Chicago, Safari's been in Chicago before it was Safari, for 18 years. And the original impact and design was, how many of you remember X servers and Token Ring and Ethernet? You're all way too young. Tim was in elementary school when this was going on. But their philosophy was 18 years ago with Arnie Duncan, they wanted to bring digital resources, shockingly, into the classroom and into the school, But in that time and that date, if you remember a word called ISDN and T1s and all that fun stuff, that's all they had. So when we originally started the design that impacted where we are today, 18 years ago, and by the way, there wasn't very many IMS standards back then, we really facilitated that design based on 640, the largest XServe cell in the country, to Chicago to deliver these resources. The biggest issue with that was that these resources were basically by school. There was no sharing, there was no communication, there was only the ability to take these resources, play them in your school, use them independently. And Tim's point was every school had their own ecosystem. Every school was the only ecosystem they had was individual resources to access what they had. So all the providers, whether you were a content provider, whether you were a video provider, whether you were a streaming provider, whatever you were, and there wasn't really very fast streaming back then, you had to work school to school to school. That just sounds a little kind of crazy with 640 some schools. But that was the original intent. And the other part, Tim's part about equity, there was none. So we had very, very influential schools with lots of resources, other schools that probably needed them more than anybody with no resources. And so Chicago started to look at that more and more over the years. How can we balance this out? And just so you know, Chicago's a little politico as a district, and you know, the mayor runs the board, so it's a little different, and if you understand that, that's great. But every school had different thing, and that's the point of this slide. And so what we had no communication between schools. We had people trained in 640 some schools. We'd have everybody doing different things. You can imagine the chaos. Now that started to change. Now in Chicago, it didn't change really fast. You know, it took some time for everybody to realize the next phase of that was a lot of different things. It was making sure we had a strong network, making sure we had a strong way to communicate from school to school, and making sure that we could build a digital ecosystem that would provide that. So what we did for them was we basically said, okay, now you've got fast network. Now we have standards, because we would have never and couldn't get done what Dr. Clark is trying to do without standards, period, right? At Chicago, at one time, I had 48 custom integrations, okay? 48. Can you imagine trying to manage 48 customs integrations? And they were by school. So you take that times the number of school, which one had which customization and work. So as we progressed, we got to the point of saying, we're going to build a learning object repository, a resource that everybody can centralize. But with Chicago, you have a very strong teacher union. I don't know if I can say that, but you do. And in Chicago, every school still wants to build their own items, their own playlists, provide some of their own content. So the strategy here was that Chicago was going to provide a centralized model delivering these resources, but it still can be controlled by the school. And the school can build their own resources off of that model. Very important concept, very different than a lot of strategies out there. So then, and Tim, you can talk probably more about this, the professional development concept that you're going to now in the program.
So one of the issues about this is being able to deliver all of these resources at scale. So having that centralized learning object repository that also houses the curriculum is very important. For the professional development, to me, the best professional development is to make it so that teachers really can teach themselves how to use systems rather than feeling like they have to sit down for days of training of here is how all of the systems work. We don't have the capacity of doing that. So what we are doing now is working with Safari Montage. We also have external partners that focus on that professional development to go to our schools and work with our teacher leads there and our administrators. But it all has to be so simple that it's all plug and play, very easy to understand, very intuitive, and housing all of our PD resources there, lots of video formats so that we can have a blend of face-to-face sessions with teachers, also as well as support some virtual models too.
I think another thing that Dr. Clark did here, which I think is very important, is there will probably be more training that's on hand with all the vendors than there is with the school district personnel. So one of the things that has happened here is all these vendors are going to have to work together to share resources, build resources, put them into building lessons for Chicago. So we perceive there's going to be a lot of training for them on how to integrate this stuff to Chicago's needs and build those items in Chicago Public Schools. Technical support, my favorite subject. So let me tell you, there was a lot more technical support when I had 640 Apple X servers, okay? Just maintaining, keeping them, providing them. So what Chicago did was very nicely enhance their network up to very high bandwidth speeds, 100 gig plus. The ability to centralize that with multiple points, share those items between facilities. Every school has a minimum of 2 to 3 gig connection into the school themselves. A little different than the 128 they had 18 years ago. So now everything has just collapsed centrally. It's all centrally now. There's nothing. So technical support management, getting Chicago staff up to speed to support this is a dynamic shift. So some of their strategy was, which is very interesting, is we need to make sure not only can we provide a strong curriculum, an instructional curriculum process, we need to make sure that our back-end people can support this. And until all those answers together, IT, curriculum, instructional technology, can be answered, and we can still deliver a platform that can be managed and facilitated by school as well as central, they weren't going to do it. They weren't going to do it. But once they realized they could do it, those steps went a lot faster. So to kind of close up here with some other things, we also have the concept of lessons here, which are playlists. I'll let Tim talk a little bit about that, but we're building lessons in this system that are now going to be central and school, but I'll let you add to that.
Right, we want to make sure that all of our resources are going to be very student-facing and turnkey for the teachers so they don't have to spend a lot of time in their own design. We want to make sure that it is all available for them. However, if they want to design their own, also support those teachers who want to be engaged in that type of practice. The assessments, again, built out in our new student assessment system and still make it available for the teachers to design their own. We are asking our publisher or partners to design the assessments and upload them for us into the new student assessment system.
And then the last part is we're going to do analytics, but we're going to wait to get, I don't think I'll ever get where Vince is, but to get where we need to be, I think we're going to look at this as we progress in here. We're going to get this base core done, we're going to everything facilitating, and then we're going to start to look at analytics across the platform, which we already will be getting the data, but we won't be using it out of the box. But the process and the plan are all in place. And then the last part is standards. We're going to start out with this Chicago has their own standards, of course. And then we also have district standards, we have state standards, and we have national standards. Over time, this will be associated to CASE. If you're familiar with CASE standard, it's the only way we can do everything that Dr. Clark wants in Chicago is with a CASE standard. So the idea of the analytics, the idea of them having their own SALT server to create their own items, their own facility, the items that come from the state, the GUIs all matching up. With 640-some schools, I can't have GUIDs and standards that don't match up because we can't get the right analytical data then. So it's very interesting that as we build this process of where we're headed with that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.